Hello and welcome back. Day 2, right? Yes. I hope you had very exciting mornings. Did you? Yeah? That's not so convincing. Did you have exciting mornings? Yes. That's much better. I love the energy. Let's keep that up. We are going to need that for this session as well. As you can see, I have got a new co-host today. This is Anna.
Hi. Thank you. My name is Anna. I am a fellow at Teach for Ukraine, and I'm really excited to be here with you all, especially since you met my student Darina yesterday. So, yeah, thank you.
Yes, Darina was amazing. So props to you, to her great teacher. I hope you all had very insightful and inspiring experiences this morning. And we are going to bring these experiences together now. Anna, what did you visit in the morning? Where did you go?
I had an amazing visit. We worked at a robotics workshop. I hope you're all jealous because it was amazing. And I'm really excited to hear from all of you. But from what I saw, it's really exciting how people can implement not only gender-sensitive education, because it was a girls' workshop, but also for me as a teacher, it's really fascinating how they made such deep topics like sustainability really easy for children to grasp. It was easy for me, so.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so cool. And we will have the opportunity in this session to reflect some more on the experiences that you had this morning and to talk to each other and to share the things and the takeaways that you learned this morning. We will also hear from some of our alumni and from some different stakeholders, a lot of things to do this session. To start off the conversation, we have got a special guest today. We have got our brand new Federal Minister of Education in Austria here, Christoph Wiederkehr. Up until recently, he was the deputy mayor of Vienna and has been working on improving the education system in Vienna for a long time. And he has supported Teach for Austria tremendously over the years. Thank you for that, and please welcome to the stage.
Hello, and thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you. Feel a good energy in this room. And to see that you had a good day visiting the City Hall with Felix. A few people did that. Also a school in Vienna. That's great. And it's great to be in a room with so many people who want to change the education system of the future, because a lot of change is needed. And that's also the reason why I am in politics, because with the age of 15, I felt as a pupil at my school that I need change because the system is not working good enough. And so since that, I'm working for a better education system, for an education system that's more fair and also more fun. Because I think we need fun learning things, because learning new things is fun. We are curious as human beings. And so I think our institutions for education should feed that curiosity. But often it happens the opposite, that we have kids, but also teachers who don't want to go to school and are afraid of school. But here in this room, I see the opposite is true. All of you want to have a good place at school, a good time, and teach the kids what they need in a society that's changing so much. And that's why change is needed, because our society is changing more fast than in the past, and we don't know what the future will bring. But one thing is sure, that if kids are well educated, they will be happy and successful in life, whatever the future changes will be. And so that's what I'm working on as education minister now. I'm in my 3rd week of school, so everything new, but also nice. And I worked on the same topics in the past as a deputy mayor in Vienna, in this great city. And I see what the challenges are, and I did see what the challenges are in Vienna, in Austria, but all over Europe. And not only in Europe, I think we have big challenges in most of the education systems in the Western liberal democracies. For example, also US, it was a very good school system in the past, is getting worse. And so we need a turnaround in most of these countries and also in Austria. And that's the thing we share, not only the values, but also the perspective that we need a change. And that's also the reason why I have been working with Teach for Austria a lot in the last years. And not only with Teach for Austria, but also with other chapters. The first time I met Teach for All was Teach First in the UK. I was a newly elected member in the Vienna Parliament responsible for education. It was 8 years ago. And I wanted to see another city who did well on school development and new policies on education. And so I decided to go to UK. And I got great appointments thanks to Teach First in UK. They gave me the opportunity to see a school who managed a turnaround. It was fascinating to see that, the school with 98% of the kids with migrant backgrounds and doing so well. And this experience from 8 years ago is until today very important to me because I did see what's possible. If you have the right mindset, if you have the right culture, if you believe in the kids, and if you have a setting at school that's there for the kids, like where kids can develop themselves and be curious, but also learn things. And so since that, I have been working a lot with Teach for Austria. We implemented the project in the kindergartens in Vienna. That's great. That's really good for the kids because I think the earlier we start, the better it is. So we need to focus more on kindergartens, on preschool education, because everything what we can do there will help us in the future. So we need more funding for kindergartens, especially in Austria, but also in other countries. And the earlier the better. So my focus also as a minister will be kindergartens and primary school. Because I think what we can do in primary school will also help in the future a lot. And so I'm also very happy that we implemented a project together with Teach for Austria in the primary school starting this autumn. That first time in Austria, people also from Teach for Austria will start in the primary school in Austria. Thanks for doing that. Thanks the team of Teach for Austria for doing that. You have a lot of projects. That's another project. But I think we can grow there and also work well in the future to make it bigger. Because I believe school is only as good as the teachers are in the classroom. And yeah, teachers' education is something we have to talk about and also to change. But besides of educated teachers from universities, we also need other people with different backgrounds going to school. In Austria, it's often discussed, oh, you only have Quereinsteiger, it's called, like people who come to school without a degree in education because there's a lack of teachers. That's the debate. And I say no. Also, if there is no lack of teachers, we will need Quereinsteiger in the future. We will need new perspectives at schools from different backgrounds, different perspectives. So my task as minister is to fix that problem, that we will have enough teachers in the next years. I will work hard for that. But also, if we have enough teachers, there should be the chance for other professions to teach at school, because that's good for the schools, that's good for the kids, and also good for the teachers, that you're not stuck. You have different options in life and also at school. So that's a few of my topics in the future. I am grateful to be here. I thank the team of Teach for Austria for organizing this conference. I've heard it's the first time having a conference like this for only Europe. I think we can learn a lot from each other with different backgrounds and perspectives. I think we as human beings, but also politicians, should listen more, see what other people do, see what other countries do. So I'm also looking forward in the future to see what other countries did. I think every country is good at some things, but we all need to improve. And I think together we are stronger, together we can achieve more. thanks for your leadership, thanks for your passion for education, and have a good conference today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christoph, for your contribution, for your support, and we are looking forward to working with you very closely over the next few years. All right, time to move on.
Yes, time to move on, and we are going to hear from Teach for Austria's alumni that we visited this morning for all of our interesting site visits. And who are we going to listen to, Vetlinda?
The first one up is Julia. There she is.
Hi, everyone. I met some of you today, some of you in the past. I'm so excited. And I'm here to share a little bit about my work and what I do and how it connects to Christoph Wiederkehr's work. My title is Community Director at Education Lab. So what does that mean? The Education Lab is a newly built, we call it Home for the Education Community. Who of you knows the Impact Hub in your own country? All right, some of you do. So you get a little bit of the vibe. There was, last year, there was a call for proposals, thanks to you, thank you so much. Therefore, I have a new job, which I love, by the way. And this call for proposals was called for a new Center for Education Innovation. So why do we need that? There's a lot of great things happening in educational institutions, but not enough connectivity between the schools and between kindergartens. And that's why this center is needed to help bring everyone together and share what they do and to scale up all the amazing things educators do. And this call for proposals was won by the Impact Hub in a consortium with other organizations that are also led by Teach for Austria alumni. And what we are doing now is renovating a place where that's mainly for educators. Educators can come in, they can learn from each other, they can learn from educational initiatives, they can learn with and teach administration, etc. So it's a place where a lot of new things are happening. And yeah, what else can I say? My main job is to bring the community together, and that's one thing that I love. And thanks again. And if you have any more questions, I'm glad to talk to you about that in the break.
All right, and thank you, Julia. Next, we're going to hear from Felix.
Hello, everyone. I'm Felix. I did a program in Austria in 2016. I continued on teaching for a couple of years. And then I changed into a job which is very closely related to what Christoph does, because for the last 4 years, we did kind of like the same thing in the state parliament, where Christoph would say something and then I would speak afterwards and most of the time criticize what he said. Because I was the opposition for the last couple of years in Vienna state parliament to Christoph's government and to Christoph's acting. So yeah. But of course, we're all here for the same goal and for the same aims. And I'll try to talk about a couple of the challenges. And maybe before I do that, a second point for full disclosure. If we were able to build an education system up from scratch, I think we would build a very similar education system. So we agree on, I think, almost all of the big issues in education. But politics is about agreeing on something. It's also about putting it into place and actually doing something. So what were the most important topics for us, also for me, in politics over the last couple of years? First is language. We have too many kids in Vienna not speaking German well enough. So of all first graders in Vienna, of all the kids who go to first grade, nearly half of them can't speak German well enough to follow the instructions and have an exemption for getting grades because they can't speak German well enough. Of those 50%, more than half of them are born here and more than 80% went to kindergarten in Vienna, and more than 1 year, for 2 years in the kindergarten. So that's a problem. That has been an issue, that has been a debate over the last couple of years in Vienna. Then teacher shortage, Christoph mentioned that, is always a big issue. And then, of course, as a third issue, inequity is always huge. So like the kids that we teach in, that I still teach in the school that I still teach a couple of hours, have way less chances, way less possibilities than other kids. And I want to mention a fourth aspect of my work, because I think it's very important, and it's something that surprises a lot of people from other countries, is that we don't have any system in place that tracks the progress or tracks the quality of schools or of teaching. So also we as politicians do not have the chance to see, okay, which schools are really doing well in Vienna or in Austria and which schools are not doing well. So all the progress aid scores that we can see in Teach First and from Totteridge Academy yesterday, we don't have a system like that. And I know that there are downsides to that and you can overdo it, but we don't have any system like that in place, which makes, I would argue, our jobs as politicians really difficult, because we throw money at the system and nobody knows what's happening with that, and we don't have that. So for me and for also my party, I try to argue everywhere I go that this is a really big thing that we have to change. It would be really important to have some sort of system, some sort of accountability system and quality system in place, that we can see where is good work done and where we need improvement. And so, yes, but I agree on most things that Christoph says, at least anyway.
Right. Thank you, you two, for the great work you're doing and for sharing some of it with us.
Hi, my name is Cecilia. I am British but have been in Austria for a while and did Teach for Austria, hence my slightly strange German-English accent. I was a teacher for 5 years and I've been working in Teach for Austria directly for the last 3 years. And I've had the really privileged role of setting up, from a program point of view, our primary school track. So the last half year, I have built a program. I went to the UK to talk to Teach First UK. I met their program designers. I'm very out of breath, sorry. And I did the Teach First online academy in the UK. I went into English and also Viennese primary schools to see what the target group is, what challenges are they facing, and got feedbacks from various pedagogical universities, also from the government as well. And we are really excited to now be able to send our fellows, our new primary school fellows. We're aiming for around 15, and I think we're going to get actually too many. We might have to employ some more people. And they will be starting as pioneers in our 14th year of existence here at Teach for Austria. Yeah, and that's what I've been able to do as an alumni. All my teaching at the middle school really helped for that, and I taught before in a primary school, so I had sort of both aspects. And it's been a real privilege to take on this role and send it out into the world and hope that it all goes well. It will be an interesting process. We'll have to evaluate it. We'll have to see what happens. We'll get feedback again. But I feel like we've got something really good on paper, and very excited to see where it goes. So maybe come back in a couple of years, and we have lots of primary school fellows for you to meet. Thank you.
Now, it's your turn, actually, because we know that we actually learn best when we talk about the things that we experience, when we talk about the things that matter to us. That's why we are going to do a quick turn and talk activity. Now pay attention, trainer skills ask now. When I say go, you turn to your neighbor or to a partner and talk about the following questions that are going to be projected here now. You will have 10 minutes time to talk about what did you learn about educational inequity in Vienna or Austria today? What are your reflections from the visit on the importance of leading together for system impact? And what questions are you sitting with that you want to explore further?
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, for your discussion, and we would like to hear from some of you, some of your reflections, thoughts and ideas. If you would like to share, please raise your hand and we will call on you.
Hi, I'm Emily. I did Teach First in 2015, and I went to see Felix in his office and was very proud, took lots of pictures. I think what we learned is that context is everything, and I think we can learn so much from each other about what's going well and be positive, but then think about how we can apply that to our own individual context and understanding where we're coming from, because solutions that work in certain areas won't necessarily work in exactly the same way. So yeah, the importance of context is kind of answering question 2.
Thank you so much. That is really important to remember.
Hello, I'm Mona from Estonia. And we went to see Julia and Education Hub. And I was really impressed as a community manager how well the alumni are coming together and working together. And it was really impressive, and I got really inspired. And now I want to work in Noored Kooli for another 5 years. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Hello, Alexander from Teach for Armenia. I was just discussing with my colleague from Teach First my impressions from the Rathaus. I had the chance, Felix, thank you very much for the very, very interesting visit and the conversations that we had, though it was very cold in that parliament. I don't know whether parliamentarians are also sitting in that cold environment or it was just us, the heating was not turned on. Anyways, okay, but that was so interesting. You know, the first thing that I learned, or the most important thing probably, Vienna and Austria, these are 2 different ecosystems. I had completely different understanding of this. And the problems are also very different and very specific. So this was the first thing. The second thing, which made me happy, I'll be very honest, we have this stereotype about the Western countries where things are so good, developed, fantastic, they have been doing this for ages and stuff like that. I learned that lots of things are not how I think they were. Yeah, so this was the second impression when it comes to school assessment, data, and all the other things, because we were discussing and it was really very interesting to learn. And then probably the third thing that I would tell when we were sharing these experiences with my colleague who visited the Teach for Austria office, we found lots of common problems in terms of how we're evolving, because we were just discussing together about the stages. You're a startup, then you evolve to another type of another format, and then it continues. So I was just telling to my colleague that while doing these parallels, I realized that Teach for Armenia, and we're discussing this. I don't know, the founder and the CEO of Teach for Armenia should be here. Larissa is here. Oh yeah, we were actively discussing that Teach for Armenia is now in the stage where we're doing more than just the teaching, and now we probably need to also see how we need to position this properly as we're celebrating our 10th anniversary. You can, by the way, congratulate us on that purpose. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. My name is Susanne Pritchard. I did Teach First, but I currently work in a middle school in Berlin. And I went to see Home Away from Home, a middle school here on the outskirts of Vienna. It was very interesting because one of the fellows there told us their largest problem is teacher recruitment, which is something I think that we all hear. But it was the discussions on the bus on the way back home that really made me think, from a lot of different viewpoints, including policy, this comes up all the time. Where are we getting new teachers from? Where are we getting these career changers from? And then really thinking about, well, what are the challenges and what stops people from doing that, especially from a more across Europe perspective. So if I change countries and if I move somewhere else, like I did myself, and I think it was very interesting to see the positivity of a network like this from Teach for All, from the whole European section of Teach for All, and really how we could lobby for that change in order to alleviate the bureaucracy that stands in the way of teacher recruitment. And that was very inspiring. And hopefully that's what will happen.
Thank you so much.
Hi, hello. Jocelyn from Le Choix de l'École in Paris. We just had a reflection with the French team here about this leading together, what's behind the together, and what we've learned and what we were inspired by is within this together is the parents. We had a session yesterday about how to engage parental guidance into education of kids, and we were speaking about it in a school that I visited, a fantastic school this morning. So we'll probably be living here with a new project, sorry. But it's really, that really was a big point for us, I think, in between yesterday and this morning visit on how we get parental implications stronger in the lead of educating kids and creating in between teachers and schools. So that's the inspiration for us.
So hi, Huria from Teach for Austria here. In our group, hi, we also talked about inclusion. And the biggest point here was the difference between, in Austria we have like the German classes, and in Italy we have learned that they include the students directly in the classes, in the normal classes. And for the Italian participants, it was like, oh, nice, you have like these German classes and it makes more sense. And I was like, no, your system makes more sense. And it doesn't make any difference. So you can criticize everything, every concept, every idea. But the most important thing was here that in every part of it, we were thinking about the students. What can students really learn, and how can teachers support students? So it was here was the main part, like no matter what, we will get criticized, but the other part was, okay, no, we are doing a great job no matter what. So I wanted just to share this and say you are always doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. It's so good to hear that you got and you used the chance to talk to each other, to learn from each other, and you all got some new ideas or projects you want to work on further on. Let's do that. But before going into the next stage to gather ideas and projects and to know what to do, we will go on to the next point, because yesterday and today, we have talked a lot about the realities that we have in Europe. We have talked a lot about the challenges that we have. We have talked about what works and what we want to see happen and what education system we want to see across Europe. And now we will move to another question, which is how do we create this education system? And for that part, I would like to welcome Xavier Pretz-Monet, the chair of the Teach for All European Board, on stage, alongside some panelists who he's going to discuss that question with.
Hello everyone. Yes, well, we are halfway through this great conference, and we've said a lot about the challenges. We also heard about what works in education. We had this extraordinary presentation by Andreas Schleicher yesterday, saying things that are really pretty uplifting, because he showed us that things can change, and that even poverty is not destiny in education. Some countries with very few resources actually manage to do great things in education. And I think we all agree that whatever we do in education, if we want something positive to happen, you need really a collective effort by many stakeholders, because it's not just that schools are complicated, it's that it's not even enough to work in schools to improve education. So this is all very nice, but how can we make the things happen, and how can we achieve change in education? This is the question we'd like to address, but I can tell you that these 5 fantastic colleagues here only accepted to be sitting here if this is a conversation and not 5 presentations from them to give solutions. So I hope that we really can engage in a conversation, but that we can start with this conversation among ourselves. Since our starting point is that you need different perspectives, different actors, we have a very different kind of perspectives now. So we have one perspective, which is what does the policy evidence tell us about teaching and learning in the future? But then also, I think we as Teach4 are really have this extraordinary theory of change that you need a route, you need a narrative, and you need actually a transition from classroom, transformative classrooms, to actually policy making. So we should have that perspective too. And then 2 very different views from very different countries as to how Teach4 can help change, can bring different actors together. And last but not least, what about public policy? What about public institutions? What about European institutions? Because what makes Europe different from the rest of the world is not so much that our challenges are different, even less so that our students are different, but that we have a very strong presence of public policy. So if you really want to change education, especially if you care about inclusion, inclusiveness, and equity, you have to deal and you have to work and partner with and change public institutions too. So to start the conversation with these different perspectives, I'd like to give the floor first to Lydia. Lydia, can you first introduce yourself? You do this much better than me. And then give us your perspective on where we stand on the future of teaching and learning and what the OECD is preparing this.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Thank you. And generally, thanks so much for inviting me here. It's really, really exciting to talk to you all. I'm Lydia. I work at the OECD in Paris. And we're currently working on a project, or we're developing a project, specifically on educators who come into teaching through unusual career pathways. So Teach for All is one of the actors we really look into, and it's really exciting already from what I've learned this morning and from conversations I had yesterday to speak to you, and this is really inspiring for the project we're kind of developing at the moment. And just to give you a bit of background on what this project is built on, basically we're just rounding up a project we had before that is called New Professionalism and the Future of Teaching. So this is a project that looked into labor market trends basically and what young people look for in their careers, and specifically teachers. So it brings together basically data on teachers, how they're doing at the moment, but also how these trends can be accommodated so that teachers in the future can do their work better. And what we did was a study with 3 systems. One of them was Wales in the UK, one of them was Flanders in Belgium, and the last one was actually in Austria. So it's not the first time in Vienna, it's also where I met Severin already before. And we invited different stakeholders from each of these education systems to come together and brainstorm with us and ideate about scenarios of the future of teaching. And it was really interesting what they came up with. There were some very concrete and unique ideas that were situated for the system, but also there were some overarching topics that I want to talk about a little bit more. So basically, everywhere in these systems, people prioritize more growth and openness in the profession, more flexibility, much more space for innovation, and also a bigger focus on well-being of both educators and students. And one of the ambitions that came really through most strongly was to recognize schools as places that are built on relationships and that also build relationships, not only between teachers and students, which is, I think, something that Andreas, my colleague yesterday, already talked about, but also on interprofessional and cross-sectoral relationships. So this was really important for stakeholders in the studies. And as a second step in the project, we asked researchers from basically all over the world to tell us what their perspective is, where teaching might stand in the next 20 years and what they hope for and wish for. And they also said that the main priority, many of them said, that the main priority is really to connect schools better and to lift both teachers and schools out of the isolation that they find themselves quite often in, and connect them with research, with technology, with communities, and basically with everything else that is out there. So this was kind of the consensus that we found. Of course, as I said, there were a lot of nuanced perspective on the studies in general. Each of the country had their own ideas. But one thing that also came through and that we found really important to emphasize was that the future is really already here. So, I mean, most of you know this, and we saw this morning as well, lots of teachers are already connectors and innovators and these agents of change that you quite often talk about at the policy level. And it's much more a question for policymakers how we can recognize this better and support them better in what they already do. And to our minds at the OECD, and it's nice to hear that the Austrian ministry is kind of in line with this, this is where second career teachers or teachers who enter the profession on diverse pathways are really important and come into the equation basically, because we know and data shows that they quite often are really motivated. They do have unique networks that can benefit them, the school, and also the students. And they have a lot of skills that are not necessarily given in like the classic teacher education. So to our minds, they can really be these kind of drivers of change or motors of change, however you want to call them. And still they face so many challenges, which is also something we see in every system. Lots of them exit the profession quite easily again, or not quite easily, but quite quickly again. So we're kind of curious to know what keeps them there and what motivates them to do different things afterwards. Are they just interested in other career pathways? Or do they need more help? Do they need more support? How can we do this at the policymaking level? So yeah, I'm mostly not necessarily here to talk at all. I'm really curious to hear that from you and to listen to you. And it's a great opportunity to get these perspectives. So thanks a lot.
Okay, this much on teacher sentiment. But Sandra, you have a very I don't want to say typical because it means that there's many, but it is what Teach4 aspires to. Huh? You started in a school, you started as a fellow and an alumni, and now you are at policy-making level. So can you tell us about this journey and what it has meant for you, and what this says about how we can achieve the education system we want?
Yes, hello everyone. It's an honor to be here, so thank you for having me. So I'm here representing probably like 3 roles. I'm from Estonia, so top performing country in education in Europe. I'm from the ministry, so I have the policy making experience. And most importantly, I think I'm alumni, so I did the program myself. I have the experience of 2 years of teaching, actually 3, because I stayed for another. But what I also bring, actually, as we are talking about transforming systems, I have lived through systemic change. Because when I went to school back in the beginning of 90s, Estonia had just regained independence. So our national average salary was about 35 euros, whereas now it's like around 2,000 euros per month. I was raised by a single mother, so my first years we were living in a dormitory. We used ration coupons to buy basic goods. Most of my toys came from German aid packages. And today I'm here on this stage like influencing education policies. This is probably something that my mother never imagined that could happen. And both of those changes, what I want to say, my point being that both of those changes for Estonia and for me personally happened because of education. This is possible. This is what education can do. And now the most important question, like how does it happen? My personal experience from the classroom, but also what I think is true for education system in Estonia, the answer is trust. When I first started in classroom, I probably was not a very good teacher in didactics sense. I mean, I didn't have the necessary skills. I developed them over those 2 years. But what I had in place as starting from the very, very beginning, my focus was on the relationships. I really made an effort to get to know my students very, very well. And that built trust. We had trust, and that resolved so many issues after that. They really didn't want to disappoint me, so I didn't have so many issues with classroom management. And so, yeah, it built up motivation, this relationship we had. And the same, I think, is true for Estonian education system. One of the key elements for our success is autonomy. Our schools and our teachers have really high autonomy, but you need to have trust in order to have autonomy. So how do we build this trust? We have good, strong connections. We have to know each other. And in a small country like Estonia with like 1.3 million people, we actually do know each other. It's not that difficult for us in the ministry as well to bring all school leaders in the same room. I mean, once a year we have this conference for school leaders. They're not all there, but like more than half of the school leaders come together every year. They have the education minister there talking directly to them. So we are very, very connected, which makes the cooperation so much easier. Now the question is, how do we scale that up in bigger systems? How do we take the same model of these strong connections, personal connections, and take it on a wider level? And here I think this room full of people that we see here and the work that Teach4All is doing is such a great example how to have those strong connections between people across Europe. So that would be my very short and simple answer.
Yes, thanks for this leadership development journey, right? So Severin, picking up from that, well, we heard the other side of the coin. We've heard from the minister, from others, what they see as the Austrian education system and how Teach4 Austria has contributed. But what is your view, especially as to how bring together all these actors that we know need to be brought together? So what would you add to the conversation on how to bring this collective effort into place in Austria, but also elsewhere, perhaps in Europe.
Thank you. Was it for you guys this surprising how much Christoph pitched Teach for Austria in a way? It was for me even. But I know he's a nice guy, so thanks to Felix for not hammering him afterwards. Yeah. I talked to him before, I agree. And both of this, if I may pick on you, Felix not hammering him and Christoph saying what he did relates to what you just said, which is a certain element of trust and aligned vision, right? We all disagree, I'm sure, somehow on the how, on the detailed, and I think this is the tricky bit about politics. We can say we want every child to have a fair chance at education, like Wendy has written in your book, but it's not so easy to actually say what, in detail, will lead to that positive result we all look for. And so I think our approach to how we deal with politics, I'm often getting criticized by some people for not being maybe too open or too outspoken on the things I criticize. But I have a lot of respect for that profession. I have a lot of respect for people who actually want to do the right thing for their country. And I think this can create trust by me and our organization trying to see the good in their intentions, but also not only accepting, like Dame said from London, Clayton said before, we should also stand for our values. So I think both is needed. We need to respect the politicians for trying to do the right thing, but stand for our values, stand for what we believe is right, and not only talk about it. So the motto of Teach for Austria is machen statt reden. So we try to show it's possible by doing it, and then convincing them to follow our lead. And I think this is only possible in an area of trust. Trust is built on respect and communication, and this is a way we have gotten Christoph surprisingly to applaud us on stage.
Okay. Yes, now I should confess that I had the absolute privilege of witnessing how Larissa created Teach for Armenia from scratch and built it into what it is now. And I think we will all benefit, Larissa, if you can say a few words about how you managed that and what kind of partnerships and what kind of leadership you had to exert to engage, particularly in a country like Armenia, where public institutions are very present and you can hardly be ignored if you want to do something about education. So how did you manage? And I was extraordinarily impressed by what you did in the first years. So I would love you to tell us how a Teach For organization can be born and can be brought to maturity, which is what it is now.
Thank you. So I'm a very proud alumna of Teach for America, and my journey started when I was still teaching in the classroom. I was teaching in Phoenix, Arizona, and in my second year, I'm half Armenian. My father's American, Irish American, for that matter, from the United States. But Armenia was always my home. I had grown up in post-Soviet Moscow. I had like this really bizarre and interesting childhood that kind of took me all over the world. But Armenia was always my home for various reasons. Growing up as an Armenian in Russia had its challenges. And in my second year of teaching with Teach for America, I just asked myself, like, what would it look like if we had something like Teach for America in Armenia? And the rest is history. I moved with essentially nothing. I had $10,000 in my bank account from my career as an educator, and I moved to Armenia. I was a young woman, diasporan, which in Armenia has not always a very positive connotation. I didn't speak the language very well, but I had this idea and I had this obsession that this had to be created and this had to exist in our country. And it was really important for me to build a nonprofit organization that would primarily serve the interests of kids in Armenia. This sounds maybe very basic for all of us, but I think we were one of the first nonprofits that decided to work in the system, not adjacent to the system. We decided to go the very difficult route. I mean, no one really wanted to work with the government, especially back then. We had a pretty authoritarian regime. We had a democratic election process that had determined outcomes, and for me personally, it was very difficult because I didn't agree with the politics. I didn't like the politicians. But I knew that in order for us to actually have system change, we had to work with the system and in the system. And so even as a young entrepreneur, and I didn't know many things at the time, I did know that I had to take my ego, put it aside, and truly figure out a way to work with people that I didn't like and didn't agree with, as long as we had a common kind of understanding of what had to happen for our kids in Armenia. And so we started in 2013. It took us a couple of years to get the organization off the ground. We have a better understanding now of educational inequity in Armenia, but just for you all to know that even the word equity in Armenian doesn't exist. We had to create the word. It's equality, and equality and equity are different things, right? So that was the starting point. And we've gone through this really crazy and challenging and beautiful journey where we had to do a lot of things that maybe even other organizations and other types of contexts don't have to do, because the plane had to be built and flown, essentially at the same time. Fast forward, this is our 10th year, as my colleague Alex said. And, in 2019, we had a global conference, and there was just this overwhelming sense that finally there was a common understanding of the problem that existed in Armenia. There was a common understanding of the fact that we need to build educational equity and provide access to all kids. And, I think how we get there is still being discussed. Thankfully, we elected a democratic government 5-6 years ago now. And it seemed like the sky was the limit, and then in 2020 we were invaded and we've had multiple wars. This was all also during the pandemic, and so I think we've been challenged in ways that no one prepares you. Definitely, no business school prepares you, or no education prepares you for this kind of thing. And so it's been really an interesting journey. And at the moment now, I can say that Teach for Armenia is a true partner to the Ministry of Education. I think they trust us. I think we're there to critique some of the things that are happening, but also provide solutions. Teach for Armenia is a testing ground for many ideas for the government. We are also a very small country of 3 million people. We all know each other. And often when we feel overwhelmed by the problems of our country, we just remind the Ministry of Education that this is essentially a large US school district. So I think we can figure out ways to really make quick reforms. So, there's still things, it's still a bureaucracy, and we wish we could move at a faster pace. But I think working as an innovator, as a partner, and taking the time to build trust, as all of my colleagues, I think, have said up until now, whether it's within classrooms, within schools, and with government officials, whether you agree with them or don't agree with them, as long as we're there for a common good, that's all that it takes to make change happen.
Yes. And speaking of partnerships, Nuria, the European Commission, and perhaps the utmost example of a public institution, I know from experience that the Commission has supported Teach4. But I also know, I am very, very conscious that Teach4 has supported the European Commission a lot, because it has proven that public institutions can, with very little support, actually provoke and create impact by partnering with an institution like Teach4. So can you tell us a bit about this? And perhaps more importantly, because we are all looking at the future and how to change systems, what are the plans and what is the Commission doing so that in the future you can also keep supporting education and civil society institutions that can achieve impact? So what are the plans and what are you up to is the question.
Yes. So thank you everyone. It's a huge pleasure to be here, to listen to everyone, and also the fact that you have students in the conference. It's amazing, and so first a big thank you. The second point, what are we up to? One thing that we have been up to and we continue to be up to, I will say very briefly, it's about data and figures, because this is something we've been looking very hard at equity, so looking at PISA, combining the levels of the 3 reading, math, and science, combining them together to look at severe underachievement, and comparing this between kids with high and low socioeconomic background. And the difference is six times more risk of underachievement among kids from low socioeconomic background. And between 18 and 22, this has not moved for children from high socioeconomic background. So it's the kids from low that have seen the level decline. So this is something very much at the heart, also what we are going to do in the future. So there is so by virtue of just showing this, and we hope to prompt awareness discussions, policy changes. That's one way that we've had since a long time. It's not new. What are we up to? We have a new commission since December, and with a new commissioner who's responsible for many things, including education, also jobs, skills, social rights. And in the first 3 months of the new commission, there's been already some initiatives on education put on the table, very much with the emphasis on competitiveness and skills. And the idea is also to put these documents on education on the table of finance ministries, of heads of state, not only ministries of education, but to try to get it to other tables that have also more influence on budgets, on resources. So that's another thing. We are, so there was work on basic skills, on STEM. And on basic skills, one thing was to include citizenship as in the set of basic skills that all children should have. That's a novelty. And then for the future, we're preparing a new agenda for teachers. So that will come in 26. And I feel very strange talking to teachers about this, to be honest. It feels very absurd in one way. But we are going to consult very much. So you'll be informed. We're going to make a call for evidence, because we need to really hear from a lot of you and beyond. And these 2 days have been so enriching to hear about that. Also what you've all been saying about if we say an alternative pathway or a different pathway. But we also have a figure about that, which is 5. I think it's a bit like 5% of, in all countries, of teachers come from non-traditional pathways. So it's 5 or 4 point something. Is it small? Is it big? What does it mean? Maybe only 4%, but a big impact. So I think this is also something to discuss. But so I think that's for the future. And I think that's the main thing. The funding, perhaps, should say, because we are also preparing the next multi-annual financial framework for the Commission. So it takes a long time to prepare, because the Commission will make a proposal after summer. And that proposal will go to the tables of all the ministries. It will be discussed by ministers in the Council. The Parliament will also come in. So it's a process that takes time to have a new framework in place for 29. We're already on it. And there is a consultation open now, for example, about Erasmus+, but about all the programs. And if I can encourage you to reply or to share it, because this is a moment where we need, from the Commission side, we need good reflections and good arguments, how to think in the future, what works best, what to continue, what to improve, and also it will be difficult discussions, because of the political and the geopolitical context has an impact on the funding, and we've all heard about military being prepared and all this, and where is education here? So how to keep it in where it should be, where we think it should be, but we have to work hard to put it where we think it should be. So I think this is not something that Commission can do alone, but we really need, And the convening, perhaps the last thing, because we were yesterday in this roundtable, and somebody said about the role of the Commission convening, also in Erasmus Plus, with these projects, convening partners to work together, and then we try to convene people who want to make Europe better, and I think it's I will go back with this idea and try to, to make it.
Yes, because if there's one, I think, idea that has been all along over these 2 days, but also today in this discussion, is this concept of trust, no? That applies to the way you deal within school with the educators, but it applies also in the way you deal in a country as Teach4 partners. It applies also to funding. And hopefully there will be, on the part of philanthropy, but also on the part of public policy, a realization that perhaps looking at what you do with organizations in civil society in terms of simple transaction or project-restricted partnership is not necessarily very productive. And that we may be wanting to look at outcomes and values and trust, therefore. Especially since an organization like Teach4 and our partners, since 2018, has proven its financial capacity and its trustworthiness, so that perhaps we can establish a partnership with a public institution like the Commission based on trust and not just based on project execution. Because we know that project execution is fine, but we need also to have organizations that can grow from scratch and not just with a $10,000 account in the bank, but also to have support so that we can preserve our values and our core principles in Europe. With this tirade, I would really like to open the conversation, because the idea was just to start the conversation. We will not today end the discussion as to how to create the education systems we want, but this is a good start. And I hope that now you can join this discussion and tell us your ideas as to what could be done better and how all these very complex system of people, institutions, can come together and provide a better world through education.
So my name is Annika, I'm a Teach4 Sweden alumni. So my question is for Sandra, and thank you all for a really great round of discussions. So I was interested what you said about how scaling what you're doing in Estonia, like on to bigger countries and bigger systems. Do you have any examples of that that you could tell us about, or any ideas on how that could be done? Because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I have experience only from Estonian system, so that's a good one. But maybe, I don't know if that answers directly to your question, but I can share an example how we managed to keep the schools open during COVID pandemic, because this is a good example how sometimes we say that in education system, in times of crisis, it's difficult to do anything because everything in education takes a lot of time. And so also during COVID-19, the situation was really difficult. We didn't have enough information to make any good decisions. So just to give you a very simple example, what we did during COVID pandemic was to keep the schools open. We needed data that where exactly the virus is spreading and where it's not. So our minister introduced speed testing, rapid testing in schools, but we needed this data. So at that time, I worked as data analyst. So every Friday, we sent out a very, very simple questionnaire to all schools. And every school leader, basically almost all of them, over 90%, filled in this questionnaire how many positive rapid test results they had in their school that day. And also they filled in very short questions about what do they need from the ministry, what kind of support they need, what kind of challenges they're facing. And so we got this information very, very, very quickly. And on Friday, we got the information. On Monday morning, already the minister was in the government sharing this information with the health board and everything that really wanted us to close down the schools all the time. And thanks to this data, we got to keep these schools more open and closed only those schools that were actually where the virus was spreading. I think my point here is that with very simple solutions and relying to data and analytics, you can actually have a very, very big impact. And I think, again, you can do that in no matter how big the system is. This is something that doesn't depend on the size. This is something that you can do on a wider scale as well. Just use the data, use the analytics to really make the change happen. I think that's one example.
The fact that Estonia is a paperless administration also helps, I guess, no?
Yeah, we have e-government, yeah. We have everything online, everybody is very used to using e-services, yeah.
Other comments? We take answers also, not just questions, huh? Yes.
Hello, I'm Gergana Efremova from Teach for Bulgaria. My question is for Nuria Diaz-Gardia. I know that education is one of those policies that are actually governed by the member states, and we have seen, especially in Bulgaria, many legislative reforms in other sectors that happened thanks to directives that have been issued by the Commission. So is there any discussion at all for the education becoming also such a policy sphere which is more governed by the Commission than nationally led?
Thank you for the question. I think for education is what you're talking about. The Commission has had, or the Union has had, a lot of influence on other matters like gender equality, for example. I think that's where for Bulgaria, with the paternity leave, something came also at the, inspired or triggered by Union action. For education, it's much more difficult, in fact, because of the competence, what you say. But how is the Union competence is to support. And the aim is quality education. So it's to contribute to quality education in Europe. And then there is something that says, and if needed, really, if necessary, you can also support the member states' action. But I think there's also a lot that the Commission can do with this current competence, because I think there is a need. I think it's needed to support the national action. So I think we can probably do more with the same competence, perhaps. We have to think about that. Like in other areas like I've worked on, like inclusion of migrants, it's also national competence, but perhaps there is more done by the Commission, also in partnership with the cities, with the municipalities, and with the civil society organizations. More has been done there, so perhaps we can, there is a lot to reflect now, and it's a very good moment to reflect on that, so thank you.
Hey there, Arnold, Slovakia, Teach Slovakia Ministry of Education right now. Question for Lydia. So, in the current ongoing crisis with teacher staffing, what are some highlights or what are some things that your data is showing you and telling you, like, okay, so this is something that governments are doing that's very effective in bringing more teachers or more people into the teaching profession? If you could just highlight 1, 2, 3 things that you perhaps didn't mention in your previous short speech.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. So the first thing probably to say about this is that across the OECD, countries are struggling with teacher shortages. Some are admitting it more than others, but it's a thing that you can see everywhere. And in fact, a lot of countries are relying very much on second career teachers right now. Austria is one of them, and they have a bit more of a holistic strategy, I would say, than others, where, I mean, maybe some of you have heard of Klasse Job initiative. It's a pretty strong initiative that is driven by the Austrian ministry that really tries to change the societal narrative around teachers and also gives them just better opportunities to get into teaching and to basically, design their own careers more than they had before, to give teachers more autonomy and so on. So they try to make the job actively more attractive. And I think a lot of countries in the OECD are trying to do the same, but it's really difficult because the reputation of the profession is so low, particularly, I mean, there are lots of countries that see that. I don't want to call any names here, but you might know about these countries. So it's difficult, and second career teachers are really one of the resources that people want to tap in. And it's interesting to see how second career teachers are defined in different countries. For instance, when we asked Sweden actually about the second career teachers, we got a response from them about, we don't really have any second career teachers, we just have teachers basically. So they kind of consider everyone who gets into teaching as a teacher, no matter what their education looked like. And then in the UK, even people who are trained outside of the UK are seen as second career teachers. So some countries make it a little bit more complicated for teachers to enter the profession. So yeah, there are different kinds of strategies, but it's basically something that every OECD country kind of has on their mind at the moment. I hope that answers the question a little bit. But yeah.
I can maybe comment what we're doing, at least trying to do in Estonia. One thing is that making the teacher education more flexible, so that it would be easier to get teacher qualification while you're already working in schools. And this also means we don't only have to work with universities to change their curriculums so that it would be more flexible, but also working with the school leaders so that they would support the teachers who are coming in from different professions to actually get teachers qualification. They have to change their schedules so that they could go to university on Fridays, for example. They have to support them with mentors, and so it's like supporting school leaders, changing the teacher training curriculums in universities, just to make it more flexible to become a teacher.
Yeah, in the end, especially in some of the countries that Lydia doesn't want to mention, for example, Southern Mediterranean countries, Spain, not to mention one, Italy, I think at the end, the real opening of Teach 4 is that the shortage and the difficulty of recruitment is so high that it cannot be denied. So governments, regionally usually, start looking around, and in the end, they reach the conclusion that they have to go with Teach 4 because we can provide demonstrably a good pathway, alternative pathways or conventional pathways for the induction of teachers. As a matter of fact, interestingly, one of the most impactful programs of supported by Erasmus was a program of Teach 4 partners, led by Bulgaria, precisely on the induction of teachers, which became legislation and became the national policy of the country. So it is really a pathway for us to have an impact. But only because there is no way to deny that no matter how much they try, they can't deny that there is now a shortage of teachers and a very huge turnover of new teachers because they're simply discouraged by their low reputation and the lack of incentives and guidance and so.
Hello, my name is Ange. I'm from Teach for Belgium, and my question is for Nuria. You briefly mentioned the fact that with the geopolitical context of Europe and the shift being made to put the focus on defense, that maybe the focus that has been put on education might be not a priority or less a priority as it used to be before. But I was also wondering, considering the fact that Europe is moving all over Europe, we see that the rise of right-wing parties that tend to want to restrict migrants' rights, and also when it comes to education, that there is this strong belief that inclusion, equity does not go together with academic achievements. Do you already see a shift in the work that you do in the Commission and the mindset that is present in defining policy? And how do you see this evolving in the coming years? Because I think we are sadly at the beginning of a wave that is not per se in line with the Teach for All values.
Thank you for the question. So I hope I didn't convey a message that about the priorities. My point was just to stress this, that with the geopolitical context, there will be more priorities to fund, and that we will have to work hard. So it was not to already say what's going to happen. And in fact, the commissioner, the vice president who's responsible for education, that was also one of the reasons why she wanted to have, in the first 3 months of the commission, to have initiatives that cover skills, education, STEM, because she wants to put education very, very there at the top of the on the table from the beginning. So this is why we've done it. But I think what I meant is that we have to work very hard and continue to work very hard, so it remains there. And also about like the far right you were saying, and all this, and between equity and excellence. In fact, it's a little bit what Andreas Schleicher was presenting yesterday, that it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily go one against the other. You can have equity and excellence, and so it's not. We should try to achieve equity and excellence. It's not one at the expense of the other. That is also something we have to work hard with. And then the point on citizenship, on putting citizenship education as a basic skill, it's also this idea that all children, it should be a basic skill to have civics and citizenship competence in our current world. So that's also the idea to prepare. I'm not sure I responded to everything, but I'm happy to come back after if I didn't. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael from Teach First in the UK. I've got one comment and one question, and I'll try and keep them brief. One thing that has been mentioned when we talk about achievement, but not discussed in depth in any conversation I've had, really, but maybe elsewhere, is about the importance of acquiring a lot of knowledge, of teaching stuff to our kids. And I want to suggest a challenge and a provocation, which will be familiar to people that did the fellowship with me, which is that the future doesn't change everything, that the most important thing our schools can give the most disadvantaged students in our society is lots of knowledge, learning loads of things, yes, including by heart, because this is what they will think critically with, and this is their one chance, potentially, to learn it for free. And this is so important. And what happens in the interactions in our classrooms is the single most important thing that we can do. Yes, schools should reach out to the communities. Yes, well-being is important. And yes, we want our children to be happy. But the one area of society where no one else can contribute, where we can, is what happens in that German language classroom that I was in today. And I think that is our overwhelming priority. And what frustrates me is that the discussion around knowledge and learning and curriculum content is often surrendered, actually, to the right. And we don't talk and marry knowledge enough with what's important to us in our identity. So my question to you is this, and I look forward to discussing. But my question is this. As Europe goes through a process of rapid change, and in your countries included, that's scary for a lot of people. What are we very proud about wanting to conserve?
It's so difficult to listen and then also think what I should say. I think what gets me here? What is so important for me that I'm here? Right? That's your question in a way. What is so important in terms of values that we want to equip our kids with, that they, live their lives with this value being an option they can choose by the work we do? And if I frame this question this way, I hope I got it more or less right. I think that this question of how they can go through life with respect to others means having self-esteem, means having a purpose in their own life, means having the competencies that they equip themselves to find out what their purpose is. This would be my value.
Marisa.
To us, it's a little bit of an existential question because we're fighting for our right to exist in Armenia. And every day that is at risk. So what we're doing at Teach for Armenia is we are ensuring that our children are prepared mentally, physically, emotionally to be not only competitive within Armenia, but to be resilient and strong and powerful in mind, body, and spirit, to withstand the true risk that affects them every single day, and prepares them for a world that is very much set up against them and their existence. I also want to say that Armenia is not an EU member state. So a lot of these, I wish we could be, maybe you guys can make something happen, but we have realized that we are on our own. No one is coming to save us, and we have to be a lot more prepared for the realities that have existed and we have really been challenged with in recent years. That's the generation we need to build in Armenia today and preserve.
Well, Michael, you know what I'm going to say, right? Because we were in the same cohort and we've been having those discussions all the time. But to the rest of you, so the question about whether knowledge is important, and of course knowledge is important because you can't develop cognitive skills without having knowledge as a construction material for analytical skills and all the other skills we need to develop. But what I have been saying in our discussions as well is that people with a lot of knowledge have done some terrible things throughout the history of the world. So knowledge definitely is not enough, and we have to think more about the values that we teach in our education systems to have the world that we actually want to live in.
Yeah, I share that very much. Knowledge, skills, attitudes, the whole thing. But what I would like to keep is we've heard about this Erasmus Plus project that then led to change in Bulgaria. I mean, this is something. It's the best news the best impact we can have. So to continue to have catalyzed to amplify or speed these amazing things that exist and that are happening. If we could, spread them and make them, that would be what I would love to keep.
Okay. And Lydia.
I think I agree with a lot of things that you said. And to my mind, something that is really worth preserving is kind of the excitement and value of learning itself. And I think what you mentioned earlier, that students need to learn things by heart in times of ChatGPT and AI, and that they have to convince themselves that there is good things in the world in times of right-wing parties and extremism and scary stuff happening everywhere. I think it's really difficult to keep that excitement alive and to frame knowledge as something that really gives you agency and gives you a way of navigating through the world. So I think being with you here today really shows that you are convinced about this value of knowledge and that you want to give that to young people, and I think that's an amazing thing to see, and that's really something the teaching profession in some way does to the world. So that's something I would really like to see preserved in the future as well.
Yes, I have a simpler answer to the question, which is what actually impressed me most of Teach for All from the very beginning. I met Wendy 10 years ago. It impressed me at the time, it impressed me much more now, and it is the belief that a better future is possible. This is something that was actually more common 10 years ago. It is becoming increasingly rare, but it's extraordinarily important that this continues. First, because as we have heard all these 2 days, it is possible, a better future. It's possible actually through education. But because we have so many forces, so many people, so many institutions that are actually intent on convincing us that it is not possible, that it's not worth fighting, that everything is cynical, and that nothing is worth its values except confrontation, that having people, organizations like Teach4, and having this kind of community where this is actually what we all have in common here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. What we have in common is that we think that the world can be a better place and that we can contribute very modestly to that. I think this is what has made Teach4 possible, but is what makes Teach4 actually necessary and urgent now. Thank you to all of you for being so patient. And thank you for our panelists.
To close this plenary, you want to close it, Anna?
Thank you so much to all of our panelists. So let's give them one round of applause. And next, we're going to continue our adventure and to go on to our choice sessions that you have indicated on your apps.